Wilbur Tennant, a passionate farmer in Parkersburg, once living a peaceful life caring for his beloved cattle farm, was now confronted with what almost seemed to be a nightmare. In the past few years, Wilbur had lost 153 of his 600 cows, but these were no ordinary deaths. The animals had black teeth, blood running out of their nose and mouths, malformations, and severely damaged organs. The farmer eventually started connecting the dots as a chemical company recently began operating a site in Parkersburg and had set up a non-hazardous landfill near his land. Over the years, Wilbur accumulated a ton of evidence in the form of footage and photos supporting his accusations about the neighboring chemical company being behind the sickening situation his farm was confronted with. The images showed, among other things, terribly ill cows and deers, as well as a strange green bubbling water discharging in the creek where they all coincidentally drank from. Wilbur tried getting help from the city, showing them the recordings and evidence he had gathered, but it was in vain, as it seemed like the powerful corporation essentially owned the city. From veterinarians to lawyers and journalists, no one was willing to help the suffering man. And so in 1998, the desperate farmer picked up the phone and gave a call to Rob Billett, an environmental lawyer from a prestigious firm. At first, Rob figured Tennant was just a crazy old guy blabbering about some conspiracy theory regarding a reputable chemical company named DuPont.
(1802) In Delaware, United States, Eleuthera Urani DuPont started a black powder and explosives company called E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company. After becoming the largest gunpowder supplier to the U.S. Army and profiting from the many conflicts that occurred during the 19th and 20th centuries, his company, better known as simply DuPont, would later evolve into becoming the chemical company giant behind many world-changing inventions like Kevlar and nylon. Today, DuPont is one of the world's biggest companies in its sector, generating a staggering $16.65 billion in 2021. Now, let's go back to 1938. Eleuthera's company, which at the time was already over 100 years old, was about to experience massive growth after one of their scientists, Roy J. Plunkett, made an accidental discovery of a material called Teflon. Having the property to repel water, mud, and many other particles, Teflon was a groundbreaking discovery, as it was perfect to coat the military vehicles used during World War II and protect them from the harsh outdoor elements. Teflon is made using a chemical called C8, also known as PFOA, or let's stick to PFOA. PFOA is a chemical essential to the production of Teflon, and at the time, it was deemed completely harmless to humans. Teflon was a true world changer, and the material started being used everywhere, from raincoats to cooking pans, to prevent food from sticking to them. Now, sure, PFOA was considered safe to use by the US government, but DuPont knew very well that was not totally the case, and that the Teflon-coated products, making them millions upon millions of dollars, were eventually going to lead to a disaster of massive proportions.
Being so persistent, the farmer managed to get the lawyer's interest and, against all odds, convince him to look into the case. A case that, without knowing at the time, would end up having a massive impact on Billett and many others' lives. They filed the case to the federal court a year later, and even though Rob knew taking on such a powerful enemy like DuPont was not going to be a walk in the park, he could have never anticipated the amplitude of what was about to come. DuPont's first response to the accusations was to conduct a heavily biased study on Tennant's cattle farm, which determined that their hazardous waste was in fact not making the cows sick, but was rather caused by negligence from the farmer. But Rob knew they were onto something, and after arm wrestling DuPont in court, he gained access to a 110,000 pages document containing information about a specific chemical called PFOA used to produce one of their best-selling products, Teflon. It took the lawyer months of sleepless nights to get through the whole document, which was purposely heavy to dissuade him from pursuing the case. But it was all worth it, as what he was starting to unveil was just shocking.
DuPont, DuPont, DuPont. Without these seals, you're out of luck. Don't get stuck.
In August 2000, the tenant's case was settled, and the Parkersburg family received a large compensation from the chemical company. However, despite his victory on the case, Goliath was actually unhappy with the outcome of the lawsuit. He knew DuPont was still dumping massive amounts of harmful chemicals into the environment, and the lawyer knew he couldn't let them keep getting away with it. You see, this all started as soon as 1981, when DuPont started noticing workers in their Teflon divisions had high concentrations of PFOA in their blood. It was concluded that the substance caused severe birth defects in 2 out of 7 women working there. Realizing they were poisoning their own people, the company started dumping the toxic wastes in landfills. Rob and his team later conducted a study on 70,000 people who have been drinking the toxic water for decades, finding PFOA is linked to at least 6 severe diseases, including cancers and thyroid disease. But the scariest part is DuPont has known that for decades.
But the companies that manufactured these chemicals have been aware of the risks for decades, but failed to alert the rest of us. I know because I spent the last 20 years of my career in litigation with these companies, pulling out of their own internal files what was already there and was already known about the risks of these chemicals.
The lawyer's findings eventually led to a class action lawsuit, followed by a criminal investigation in 2005, forcing DuPont to stop the production of PFOA in the United States for a decade. However, DuPont was not just going to let go of its most profitable products that easily. Since every forever chemical has to be regulated individually, why not slightly alter the composition of C8, give it a brand new name that isn't banned, let's say Gen X, and create a brand new company to make sure people forget all about the original brand's tarnished reputation. And just like that, DuPont's new spin-off company called Chemours took over the plants that used to make PFOA, including the Parkersburg factory, and started producing the new version of the compound.
For several years now, we've talked about Chemours and its likely responsibility for releasing the chemical compound Gen X into the water and air. The industrial plant sits along the Cape Fear River, which supplies water to communities downstream. Researchers have found that people they've studied in Wilmington have higher levels of PFAS or forever chemicals in their blood than the national average.
You and DuPont. There's a lot of good chemistry between us.
Recent studies have shown that the vast majority of Americans have some percentage of forever chemicals like PFOA and Gen X in their blood due to the many companies like DuPont dumping tons of chemical wastes every year into the environment. After seeing the destructive impact greedy companies knowingly have on entire populations, Rob Goliath spent the last 16 years of his life tirelessly fighting DuPont and many similar corporations he used to defend as a lawyer in hopes to make his country a better, healthier place to live.